Well, now, when you first came to me, one of the difficulties, as I recall it, and correct me if I mistake this, you were pretty much upset about this whole experience. It had something to do with you going into treatment with Dr. Stevens. Is that right?
It came out.
It came out. You went to Dr. Stevens for what reason?
Because just about this time, as a result of a former marriage, I have two sons. And occasionally I began becoming depressed or despondent thinking about them. And I had stopped drinking from 1950 until about 1961. And then I began drinking, so that though I had gone to Dr. Stevens for what was an obvious or an apparent reason, he became interested in my returning to drink in 1961. And I happened to mention sort of haphazardly about Betty and I seeing a UFO. And then he thought this was possible, the reason that I would be returned to drink. And
well, now, as I was saying, you had gone to Dr. Stevens for this problem, and the experience of the UFO came out as a part of your therapy.
Yes.
And began to gain apparent significance and importance, and Dr. Stevens then thought we should restore it.
Yes.
But I remember that also Betty had been troubled with dreams and nightmares.
Yes, she had.
In which she had some feelings that she might have been kidnapped.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, this is correct.
And she told you about these things.
Yes.
And she told you about these things in ordinary conversation?
Yes.
Did you ever witness any of her nightmares?
No, I have not.
You were always asleep?
Yes.
And, well, now, you two sleep in double bed?
No, yes, we sleep together.
Yes,
in a double bed.
In a double bed, or at least a bed that accommodates the two of you. And does Betty talk in her sleep?
No, she doesn't.
As far as you know, she doesn't.
To my knowledge, she doesn't.
She does not.
But when I am awake sometimes and she's asleep, I've never heard her.
You've never heard her talk?
No.
Now, when she described these dreams, how much did she tell you about them? What did she tell you she had dreamed?
She would tell me that somehow she is wondering if there's any reference or relation to her dreams and to those missing minutes up there in the White Mountains from Indian Head to Ashland.
Now, about these minutes, this was pointed out only by Mr. Holman, is it?
And Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson.
That is, you were not aware. It did take you longer on the trip, but then you had a lot of experiences on the trip. You hadn't been aware that the trip took an excessively long time.
No,
I accounted for by the experiences themselves. Is that right?
That's right.
Only when you pointed out did that seem to be the case.
Yes, because he thought it was interesting that we said we had heard a beeping sound at Indian Head, and then we picked up the story by saying, and then when we reached Ashland, we heard this beeping sound again. So he said, well, what happened in between the period of time from Ashland, from Indian Head to Ashland, which is approximately 35 miles? And I just couldn't seem to recall. I just thought that, well, I probably was driving my car. Then I realized that I had been driving for a period of time with no knowledge of passing anything or going down this particular highway in this section.
Did you meet anyone at all? Pass any cars? Meet any cars?
No.
Any people? Nothing?
Nothing.
That line happened there. So, you were not particularly impressed by this at the time.
No, I wasn't.
Betty wasn't. All right. And now you will recall fully all the experiences that we have talked about in this office, all of them, and all of your feelings, but they will not upset you anymore. You recall all of your feelings, all of your experiences, and those things that you think may have been experiences. I want to go back and talk about the experiences that you had of being stopped in the road by some men in dark clothes. You describe them as looking like pea jackets or some kind of a uniform. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, how did you learn about this experience? You didn't really have it, did you?
I was hypnotized.
You were hypnotized.
And
by whom?
By Dr. Sermons.
Yes, that's true. But then you told Dr. Simon about these experiences.
Yes.
As having happened before you told him about it. Is that right? Somebody told you about this before that. In some way. Who was that?
Betty.
Betty,
my wife.
Yeah. And how did she tell you about it?
She would say that she had had a dream, and the dream was that she had been taken aboard a UFO, and that I was also in her dream and was taken aboard.
Yeah, but you told me that she didn't speak to you about it. But how did she tell you this?
She would tell me this from usually when someone would ask us about our sighting of a UFO, and then she would mention this, and I just told her it was a dream and nothing to get alarmed about.
Can you tell me all the details? Can you tell me all the details of what happened to her?
She would tell me a great many of the details of her dreams, but she was not certain to the location where we had stopped, and she would tell me she had gone into this UFO and had talked with the people there on board, and she was told she would forget in her dreams, she would forget this, and she said she would tell me that she was determined she would not forget, that she had told these people in this UFO that she would not forget, and this was the way she would tell me of her dreams. And I told her they were only dreams, and that I can't believe whatever these dreams are that she's having, except she is having nightmares if they're frightening. And she said, no, they're not frightening. It is just that she feels that somehow there is some connection between her dreams, because she has never dreamed of UFOs before, and she would tell me that they had stuck something in her navel causing great pain, and that just a wave of the hand, this pain disappeared. And she was not telling this to me, but I would be present while she was telling it to friends of ours, or to Walter Webb when we would see him, and he would ask us about the UFO sighting that we had had, and then I would hear her dreams, but never did she tell this actually to me.
Did she tell you what they did to you?
Only that they had come into a room with my teeth, and they were quite startled that her teeth could not come out, and mine could. And this is all she knew about me.
What about the putting something up your rectum that you told me about?
No, she never told me that.
Where did you get that idea?
I was lying on a table, and I was being turned over, and I felt this thing going into my rectum, and it did not pain me, and it was withdrawn.
Well, when were you lying on the table?
September the 20th. I was lying on a table.
But you just told me this was all a dream.
This was not my dream.
This was her dream?
She dreamed, but this was not what she told me in her dreams. This was not her dream. I never knew this happened, and I am very puzzled that I could think that this happened, and I never knew it had happened.
Now, all of this thing about your being taken aboard the UFO and being examined and having your teeth taken and all the examination, this was all told to you by Betty, wasn't it?
No, Betty never told me, only about my teeth.
Only about your teeth? Well, how did you get the other information?
I was hypnotized by Dr. Simons.
And he told you all of this?
No, he did not tell me this. He made me go back to September 19th when I left Montreal and was going home to Portsmouth, and he had me hypnotized, and he kept telling me to go further and further along my trip and tell him what was happening to me each time as I drove along the highway. And then I began to see things that I had never seen before, and I knew that I had seen a UFO, and my last remembrance of it was when I reached Indian Head and had gotten out of my car and walked toward this UFO, and I saw some eyes staring down at me, and I was coming closer and closer to this UFO, and I could not believe it was there, and yet I could not make it go away, and I was compelled to go closer, and I prayed to God to make me...
Don't trouble you now, just take it easy. Go ahead.
And I prayed that I could get away and run back to the car, and I did, and the eyes kept following me back to my car, and I felt very, very upset, and I said, Betty, they're going to capture us, and look out the window, and I saw it as it swung around to the rear of my car, but then I was driving down the highway, and Betty was looking out her window, and she said, I don't see it, I don't see it. And I said, it is there, it's right above us, Betty, look. And I was hurrying to get away, and I kept driving and driving and driving, and I made a turn, and I never knew this, and I don't know why I had to make that turn, and I was lost and I saw that I was in a strange area on the highway that I had never been before, and I was being stopped, and I was very uncomfortable, but somehow the eyes were telling me that I should be calm and I would not be harmed, and to relax. And I saw these men coming down toward me, and
Did you really see men? You told me that there had not been stopped, that no one had been on the road. Or did you think that there were men there?
They were there, and I did not think this. I never knew this. I never knew this because I was hypnotized by Dr. Simons, and he told me I would remember, and I remembered.
You could remember what you felt as well as anything that might happen. Didn't you just feel it? Didn't you dream it?
No, I did not dream this.
There are men down the road that actually stopped you.
Yes.
I'll go on from there.
And I started to get out of my car, and I felt myself being supported by two men, and my eyes were closed, and I felt I should be very afraid. And yet,
just a minute. Didn't Betty tell you this while you were asleep?
No.
Didn't she talk to you in her sleep?
Betty never told me this.
Well, couldn't she have told you this? Talk to you in your sleep?
She had never told me this. I had never heard her tell me this. Betty told me that we were inside a UFO in her dreams.
Yes,
but she did not know how we got there.
Yes, but didn't she tell you that you were also inside and they brought you her your teeth?
Yes, she told me they had brought my teeth to her.
So she told you everything that you have experienced, including being stopped by the man.
No, she did not tell me about being stopped by the men. She did not have this in her dreams. This was only when I was hypnotized.
Only when you were hypnotized
that I saw this.
How do you account for this? How do you account for this happening? Do you think it really happened?
It did happen. I don't know what to say. I don't want to remember it. I was told I won't remember it. And
you told you what you remember.
I was told in my mind that I would forget that it happened.
You were told in your mind. Who told you?
I thought it was the man I saw looking down at me when I was looking back at him when I was at Indian Head. And I thought it was him who told me that I should be calm and that I should not be afraid and that no harm would come to me and that I would be let alone to go on my way, but I would forget everything and I would never remember it again.
Have you ever had anything to that recollection?
In 1957, Dr. Chisholm in Philadelphia treated me for a fistula, and he would take and put some kind of salve on his hands, and this was the only time I can remember, except when I was very young and I was given an enema by my mother that I had something put in my rectum.
Was this agreeable with you or not agreeable?
I don't understand.
Did you like this experience or did you dislike it? Bother you or not?
I felt indifferent.
How do you account for the fact that you know nothing about Betty's experience and she seems to know everything about yours?
I was not in the same room with Betty. I don't know where Betty is. I don't know where she is. And I was carried into a room, and I got on a table, and I wanted to be afraid, and yet I somehow was not afraid enough to run, and I thought it would soon be over if they don't harm me.
Now, let's wait just there a minute. You said before, last time or so, that you don't know what happened to Betty. But you also said to me that you and Betty never talked about these experiences. But it seems to me that Betty did tell you a lot about it. She told you about being put on a table. She told you about having something put into her navel.
She told me about herself.
Yeah, but you told me before I hypnotized you that you didn't know anything about that. In fact, you told me that when I hypnotized you, you didn't know what had happened to Betty.
I did not know what happened to Betty when I was on the highway. I never believed her dreams.
If you never believed her dreams, why do you believe yours?
I never dreamed about UFOs until last Sunday. I dreamed about a UFO, and I dreamed about a UFO Tuesday night and Wednesday night, and this was the first time in my life I had ever dreamed about a UFO.
You told me some time ago that you had felt dissociated. What did you mean by that?
I felt that I had never known what this feeling felt like, and that I felt disassociated was as if I was doing things and my body was moving, and yet all my senses were to do something else. And I had never felt like this before in my life, and I felt disassociated.
And then you felt that these men had taken you.
I have only experienced that feeling again when I was in your office, and you made a little doggy come into the room, and I was hypnotized, and I thought the little doggy was there.
This was a hallucination, then, was it?
That was a hallucination.
And how about the experience of being kidnapped? Couldn't that have been a hallucination, too? You were very frightened.
I wish I could think it was a hallucination.
Well, why couldn't it be?
I don't know.
You were very
was
frightened,
there.
weren't you?
I was frightened.
And no harm came to you, so just explain it. How about Mr. Webb suggesting to you that something must have happened in this time?
Mr. Webb didn't suggest that.
Mr. Jackson and
Mr. Holman.
They suggested it, did they?
They did not suggest that something happened to me.
Well, they said time that was not accounted for.
That there was a period from Indian Head to Ashland. What were we doing? And I kept thinking, and all I could remember was being out on the highway at Indian Head, and I could never remember except to run back to my car and drive away. And I did not know what I was doing from Indian Head to Ashland when Mr. Jackson and Mr. Holman...
That was the time when you were disassociated.
I did not feel disassociated. I just didn't think about it, or I did not feel anything except I had to have driven, and that was all I thought that happened.
And you feel sure that this actually happened? Or is there some other explanation?
I feel very sure it happened.
Did these men speak to you in the vehicle?
Only the one I thought was the leader.
And was he the one you thought was the leader in the spaceship?
Yes.
What kind of language did he use?
He did not speak by words. I was told what to do by his thoughts, making my thoughts understand. And I could hear him, and I could not understand, and yet I could understand him, and I was told I would not be harmed, and that
is by a kind of mental telepathy?
I am not familiar with mental telepathy.
Be able to understand someone else's thoughts, or to have your thoughts understood by someone else.
I could understand his thoughts.
But he never spoke any words to you.
His thoughts came to me like I feel now when you talk to me, and were there, and yet my eyes are closed, and you ask me questions, and I know you are there, but I don't know where. And this is how he told me that I would not be harmed, and that I would be let alone to go soon as they had taken me into this room. And then I did not see him or hear him anymore, and I was going down a ramp, and I could hear his thoughts telling me I would not remember any of this because I was not harmed, and I wanted to forget, and he helped me to forget by telling me that this is what I wanted to do, and I did not remember anymore.
You accused Betty of trying to hypnotize you at some time.
When we were standing in the highway in the forestry section of the White Mountains on Route 3, the first time we stopped to get a better look at this light that was moving through the sky and coming toward us, I could see this happening, and I said, "It's a plane." And Betty said, "Look how it is flying." And I got Dulcie out the car and put her chain on her, and I kept looking up and down the highway because I was afraid of a car coming by and seeing me while I relieved myself. And then I went to the trunk of my car and I opened it and took out a gun that I had concealed there and put it in my pocket. And then I said, "Give me the binoculars." And I looked, and I could see that this thing that I thought was a plane had made a turn to the left toward Vermont and kept turning and started coming right back. And I thought I had only seen this happen when I was in Philadelphia, and I used to be a mail truck driver, and there was a box located near the international airport, and just where I would stop, I would see planes coming in to land with the lights on, and it was a very funny feeling to see this large thing coming to land. And I thought of that when I was standing on the highway, that this thing is coming right toward us. And I said, "Come on, Betty, let's go." And I quickly returned to the car. And I said, "Oh, Betty, you're trying to make me see something that is not there." And I would slow down and look at her insistence that, "Look what it's doing." And I said, "Well, forget it. It's just a plane. It's probably some flyer or something." And yet I felt very strange about the whole thing because I could not hear any sound. And I wanted to hear some sound of a motor. And I could not quite understand why it was now following us off to the right. And when we would go around a bend in the road where it would be obstructed from view, it would appear after we had gone around, and there it was coming around the other side of the mountain. And I began to really feel very alarmed and hoped that some traffic, some car, or I could see a state police to come by and say, "Look at that, it is following us," but no one came by, and I felt very uncomfortable.
Some men in the road.
Yes.
You wanted to see some men in the road.
I didn't want to see those men.
And then after you have had this experience and weren't harmed, did you feel better?
I felt funny. I could not remember, and yet I knew something had happened, and I was confused that I was off of Route 3, and I was driving back to Route 3, and I just could not understand why I was off Route 3. And Betty said, "Well, do you believe in flying saucers now?" And I said, "Oh, don't be ridiculous, Betty. Of course not." And we then had a beep, 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 beep sound on the car, and I kept quiet after that.
Did Betty hypnotize you?
No, Betty didn't hypnotize me. I wanted to think she was doing this to me to make me feel better, because I kept seeing that object in the sky, and I finally stopped that Indian head because it was right there, large and hovering, and I could not understand this. So I knew I had the gun in my pocket, and I said, I will get out and get a better look. And I opened my car door and tried to brace my arms on the door and the roof of the car, and the motor was running and my arms were jiggling, so I stepped away from my car, and when I did, the object, which was to the right of the car on Betty's side, made a arc-like turn, or not a turn, but a swing in motion over to the left of my side, and I thought, my God, what is this thing? It's got to be a helicopter to just stay suspended like that, and it's just not making no sound, and I started walking across the highway to look at it, and as I walked further away from the car, I noticed with my binoculars that there were about 11 men now, I thought, looking down at me, and they suddenly made a turn to what I thought was a panel, and I could see their arms going out, and there was one that kept looking down, and I kept going closer, and I could see two red lights coming out from the tip of this thing that did not look like a plane at all, or a helicopter, and I could see a long something coming down from the center, and I kept going closer and closer, and I thought, oh my God, what is this thing? And I felt myself being told to come closer, and I was greatly confused. And I blinked my eyes, and I thought, this can't be real. And I shook my head and turned it away and looked back, and I said, oh God, it's there. What is this thing? And I put my hand toward my gun, and I could not put my hand there, and I could not understand why my hands kept going up with the binoculars, and I was told to keep the binoculars up and keep looking up and keep coming closer, no harm would come to me. And that's when I opened my hands and the binoculars fell around my neck, and I ran screaming back to the car that they were going to capture us, and yet I could not understand what they wanted to capture us for. And I thought I should report this to the police if ever I could find a call box or anything or a restaurant open, because this was very unusual for something to do that. And I thought of the military, and I thought since they had on black jacket, the one looking at me had on a black jacket, he must have been a military officer, and yet I could not quite understand why they were doing what they were doing, and there was no sound coming from this thing just up there in the sky.
How big were these ones?
They didn't seem too big.
What's their features like? Are they Americans?
I thought that they did not look too strange. They were not unlike people I see, human beings.
The leader had oriented kind of eyes.
The eyes kept coming down, but they were not the leader's eyes, and they kept telling me to keep quiet and come closer, and when I ran back to the car, the eyes seemed to still be in my brain, but they were not the leader's eyes. and I could not understand why this glowing thing kept following me down the highway when I ran back to the car, and it kept following me. Yet I knew it wasn't there, and I would blink my eyes and look off to the left, and I would look at Betty. I knew it couldn't be real, something in my head like that.
Something in your head?
Yes, the eyes.
Well, was this whole thing in your head then?
No.
Why couldn't it be? All right, now you resume now.
I remember it just like I remembered everything up to when I stopped at Indian Head. I remember everything I did, and I drove down the highway, and I went through North Woodstock and made a left turn and drove a short distance and made a right turn and then a left turn, and Betty was looking at me sort of puzzled, and yet she did not question what I was doing, and I could sense what she was thinking, and I said that I'm doing all right. I know I'm on the right road.
What do you think she was thinking? That you sensed what she was thinking?
I thought she was thinking that I had gone off the highway, and yet...
Do you often sense her thoughts?
Yes. We sometimes do this. We sometimes try to see if one can sense what the other. It's not too effective.
You actually try this to see if you can guess or sense each other's thoughts? Practice at it?
Well, when I was in Philadelphia, she would say that she would want me to call her, and she said that many times she would lie there in her room and say, "Call me, Barney, call me," and then I would call her. Not that I thought she had asked me to call, but that I had planned to call. But she would say, "You must have read my thoughts, because I was lying here hoping you would call."
Or could she have planted all of these thoughts in your mind and said that she might have hypnotized you?
I knew Betty hadn't hypnotized me. I wanted to think she had hypnotized me. I wanted to think that that object wasn't there, and that's why I said, "What are you doing, Betty, trying to hypnotize me?" And since I kept saying it's a plane, I wanted her to say, "Yes, it's a plane," and we drive on. But it kept following us, and I did not like that, and I knew it was very peculiar that a plane would follow a car down the highway like that, and I had hoped it was not there, and I did not want it to be there, and yet it stayed and kept going down the highway with us until I stopped, and it stopped and began coming closer as it made a swing over to my side of the car, and I started walking toward it, and I knew it was there. It was very huge and very close, and I was very puzzled that it was still there. And then I saw a row of windows, and I could see these people looking back at me, and I thought, "My, isn't this the most ridiculous thing?" And I would shake my head and look off in another direction and look back, thinking, well, maybe if I do this, it really won't be there, and it stayed there, and I kept going closer toward it, and I was confused that this thing would do that. And then I ran back to the car because I knew very strongly that it had planned to capture or grab me out there on the highway.
It had planned to capture you. How did you know that?
I could see the thing coming very, very closer, and I too was walking closer, and I saw it was not like a rope, but a long object coming down from the bottom of it. I could see this with my binoculars, and
Like a ladder?
I thought of a ladder, but I didn't know really what it was, except that something was coming down from it, and the wings that slid out were not like wings of a plane, but very more like a bat type, the military plane bat type wing. It slid out, and
The wings slid out from the fuselage, from the body?
it didn't have a fuselage type shape, and the wings began sliding out. The red lights began moving away, and I noticed that they were an extension of these wings, and I then was able to break away and run back to my car.
What was the shape of this? You say it wasn't a fuselage shape. What kind of shape was it?
It had more of an oval pie plate type shape.
Okay, so this, you say it wasn't a fuselage shape. What kind of shape was it?
It had more of an oval pie plate type shape.
Okay, so he described it as cigar shape.
When it was flying in the sky, it gave the appearance of a cigar because I thought it was a passenger plane because of the longness of it, but then it was off at a distance. And only when I came closer that I noticed that what I thought was a straight row of lights on a plane turned out to be a curved type of series of lights.
All right, now we'll stop there unless you have anything further. How do you feel now?
I feel fine. I'm puzzled about something that I can remember being hypnotized. Usually when I would come in here, I knew I had been hypnotized, but I wouldn't remember. And I would look at my watch, and 2 hours would have gone by, and I would think that only about 10 minutes had passed, and I can remember things that seemed to... About this today's session that I couldn't remember about any other sessions we've had.
What do you remember now? Well, example.
About my UFO sighting that I was talking about, and certain things puzzled me, but I could not quite understand. I could never understand. I used to talk with Walter Webb when he would pay us a visit, and we would talk about our sighting, my sighting and Betty's sighting, and I would always talk, and I would come right up to the men turning to the panel, and I never could seem to go any further than that. But now I can almost see just what that fellow looked like that was looking down at me. And he was not frightening in a horrible sense, like a distorted or unhuman type of a creature. He was more... The frightening part was the military precision, as if a person who knew what to do, could do it, and was willing to carry it out. And when I said that he was going to capture me, I used to could remember that, but I never could remember why I thought he was going to capture me.
So why was he going to capture you?
I don't know why. Why was he going to capture
Why
me?
did you think he was?
Well, now, I was forced out there, and I could never understand what caused me to walk out toward that object when all my senses wouldn't do a thing like that. And it's very strange. It's almost unbelievable.
Well, now, some of these things from here on out, as we go along, you're going to become more and more conscious of what has gone on in the hypnosis and what you have remembered. It won't help you, and you'll remember it more and more as you get used to it and not being traumatized.
Yes. You know, Betty and I used to go up to the White Mountains after this sighting. This would have been in the year of 1962, occasionally in 1963. And we would drive around in these different back trails of the mountains because we could never seem to understand what we were doing off the main highway, because I just couldn't seem to understand why I felt that I was on Route 3, and yet I wasn't sure that I was on Route 3. But now I know that I turned off the highway.
Now you remember, don't you and Betty talking about these things, about her dreams?
Yes. Betty would mention
her. About her dreams and remember.
Well, no. Some of the things she told me about her dreams, where I was a part of it, was my teeth being taken out. And I said, well, what was I doing? And she said, well, you weren't doing anything, because she really didn't know other than that.
You didn't stop for rest any time on this trip, did you?
Yes, we stopped. I'd say approximately 20 miles out of Montreal.
Yes, but I mean...
Then we stopped. No, we didn't stop at all.
You didn't have to take a nap or anything like that?
No, we didn't ever stop. It was just a continuous drive down. I felt in good spirits. I felt in high spirits. I was well rested from the night before, and we had spent a delightful day, and I knew I could drive on from the White Mountains down to Portsmouth, so I didn't stop. I didn't feel too tired. But that's puzzling because, you know, Dr. Simons, I almost called you Dr. Stevens. It's puzzling because vaguely I could remember a red glow in the highway, and I always thought someone was doing something like that, like flagging me down. No, well, yes, if a lantern had been in the hand.
Well, that would give you a red glow, wouldn't it?
No, but the glow wasn't coming from this side. The glow was just a large glow, and I thought, geez, my God, it can't be daytime.
You had a pretty large moon that night, didn't you?
Well, I thought about the moon, but the thing was right there on the highway, which I could never seem to understand. I have looked for that spot and looked for it. I said, now, how can the moon be on the highway in that kind of position? And I could never seem to find any terrain up there that would fit what I sort of dimly remembered this thing was sitting there like. And I kept remembering these men flagging me down, and then I sort of don't remember. And now I remember.
All right, then we'll continue now next Saturday.